Hello, this is Michael Wright. I'm a program director for Peace Catalyst International, a Christian evangelical organization that seeks to promote greater understanding and edifying relationships between Christian and Muslims. I'm going to cut short our introduction just a little bit because of the subject that we're going to be talking to. I'm joined with Dr. Safi Kaskas, who is an interesting individual that has been involved in the translation to modern English of the Quran that includes references between the Quran and the Bible to demonstrate the common ground that exists between Christianity and Islam. Today, our main subject is a somewhat of a dark subject. We're going to be talking about the wonderful concept of apostasy. And I guess let me begin by defining what the dictionary says about apostasy. It is considered, the definition is an abandonment of religion or a falling away from the original faith. Related concepts are heresy, which is a belief that is contrary to orthodox religious doctrine, according to a standard dictionary. The word infidel is a person who does not believe in religion or adheres to a religion that is different from one's own religion. And blasphemy, which is the act of speaking sacrilegiously about God, or sacred things, or to proclaim, or to use profane talk, is what the dictionary says. Any comment, Dr. Kaskas, about those definitions?
Well, they're fine with me because there are dictionary definitions. What matters is how a Muslim would react to them or how a Christian would react to them. The only reason we're talking, I think, about this subject is because it is kind of common among Christians that Muslims will kill the apostate. If a Muslim become a Christian, there is a common belief apparently among Christians that Muslims will kill that person, especially among missionaries. Lots of time missionaries justify their failures to convert Muslims by saying, well, he's afraid to convert because his family, his neighbors, his friends will kill him. So let's talk about that.
Sure. And it occurs to me that sometimes these words are used in a scenario where there is no separation of religion from government. We see these things that that are a means of control and maybe oppression from a government using a religion as a basis for such control.
Well, but we also notice them in the United States. I know from my friends on Facebook that if a woman converts from Christianity to Islam, she will be boycotted socially by her friends. They stop talking to her. In many cases, she'll be kicked out of the house. Her mom and her dad will just ask her to leave. She will be called names like traitor, like, all kind of ways to make her feel that she's no longer accepted in the same social circle that she grew up in. So even if that is even done here in the United States, it tells me that it's a human feeling for people to think that when you abandon the basic norm of faith that the group accepts, they'll consider you outside that group. So it has nothing to do with Islam per se or Christianity per se. I don't know about Jews, but I know about Christians and Muslims. So if you leave the group's faith, you will be considered, somewhat of a unwanted person that no one would want to welcome.
And I think that happens also among Jews and to some degree among Christians. I think the concepts we're talking about here, apostasy is the main subject, but I think it is almost an elusive thing. It almost depends on the eye of the beholder. I mean, one person's sound doctrine and sound beliefs is another person's apostasy, even amongst the same religion. I mean, if you look at churches, for example, Christianity is fractured into numerous different churches, different denominations and things. And, if you just move between one church and another, you could be ostracized. It is a rather common and probably, I would say, an unfortunate issue, especially when you delve into the commonalities that exist between at least monotheistic religions. It's just amazing what the commonalities are and the things that separate us.
Michael, let's go to the days of Prophet Muhammad, the man who taught us what Islam is all about. During his time, it is documented that many people came to Islam, accepted Islam, and then left, decided to leave. They don't want it anymore, especially after the Prophet have moved to Medina. You know, he spent the early years in Mecca. He was persecuted, then he left to Medina. So there is no question of apostasy during the years the Prophet spent in Mecca. The question is what happened after he became the governor, the person governing the city of Medina. Then the question is right there. Many people, it's documented, that accepted Islam, then left Islam, and he did not even bother to ask them, why did you do this? He didn't even question their decision. In fact, I know myself that the constitution Muhammad gave to the people of Medina guarantee people their freedom of conscience, guarantee that they should be able to practice their religion without any challenges. So during that time, I would be very surprised if anybody bring a story that's believable to say that someone changed their religion from Islam and went back into idol worshiping, and then the Prophet asked him, why did you do this? Now, they say one quotation, one hadith, we call it, one incident where they say the Prophet said, you should kill the one who apostate. That particular hadith is rejected. It's very weak. It is not considered, and I totally rejected myself. So I don't know about other Muslims. There is no reason at that time for anybody to say that this happens, because other times many people accepted Islam and left and nothing happened to them. The only time apostasy was a crime and everybody agreed that it should be punished by death is when the Islamic State was threatened from the east by the Mughal forces and from the west by the Crusaders, and Muslims were in a real war on both fronts with forces that want to annihilate them. At that time, some probably Christians came to the Muslim areas and claimed they want to become Muslims. And later, it was discovered that they made that claim, it was a false claim, so they can spy on Muslims and leave and go and give the describe what they found to the Crusaders' forces, where they came from, in order to help them. At that time, Ibn Taymiyyah, a famous Muslim scholar of that time, said it should be the punishment of an apostate should be death. But that was when the country was in war. That accusation should have been equal to, to be the guy being a traitor. So it was a military decision rather than a decision in peacetime to kill the apostate. So it was against spying rather than against someone changing their religion.
And I would observe that Jesus, in his teachings, he was really fairly broad-minded with respect to who was a follower, or a person who took their faith in God seriously. It ranged everywhere from the Samaritans, who were rejected by the Jews, that actually do not recognize the same scriptures as the Jews. They have their own version of the Torah. It's similar to the Jewish Torah, but it is different.
Yes.
So it appears to me that, our main messengers here brought messages that that reflected the teachings of Jesus, that you should love God and love your neighbor. It's very similar. It's a very simple thing to do. Anything you get, when you add things to that, especially when you have different cultures, you're going to have a divergence from those very basic, universal, eternal truths.
Well, Mike, actually, you have to look at the situation when there is a war as treason rather than freedom of conscience. If people look at it this way, that they will be able to understand it. But if they want to see it only in the limitation of accepting faith and rejecting faith, then it's their prerogative to see it this way, but then it would not be explained, it would not be understood. So in the case of Ibn Taymiyyah, in the case of that particular fatwa to kill the apostate, it was done during a time of war when the state was in grave danger. So it was a fatwa against treason. During the time of the Prophet, we don't have any proof that the Prophet ever said that an apostate should be punished, even questioned, So his biography doesn't tell me that this happens. Then, it is customary for Muslim scholars when they want to issue a fatwa to go and look for something the Prophet did so they can base it on something. The Quran definitely doesn't have anything. The Quran propagates freedom of religion. There is no compulsion in religion. I have those verses. If you want, I can read them for you, that insist on every individual's right to adopt the faith of his choice. You cannot force people to adopt a certain faith. If you cannot force them to be Muslims, you certainly cannot force them to remain Muslims if they choose to change their faith. But it was 9/11 that brought this issue to the center, and it was 9/11 prejudice that is widely spread, that got some Christians to talk about this. And I would admit that in some Muslim countries, or some countries where Muslims are a majority, they look at the issue differently. For instance, if you were in Lebanon, you can be in a religion you want. If you were in Syria, you can be in a religion you want. But if you go to Pakistan at this time, if you declare that you're no longer a Muslim, you're changing your religion, then there are consequences, and they can be very aggressive consequences, and they might kill you. So I have to admit that what Muslims do is not necessarily what Islam teaches all the time. There is Islam and there is Islamdom. Islamdom is what Muslims believe. Islam can be one thing, and what Muslims believe can be another thing. So as far as I'm concerned, in today's Muslim world, the trend is toward decriminalize apostasy, making it an issue of freedom of thoughts, freedom of conscience. People can be Muslims or can be anything else they want. They're free to do this. I'm certainly for that.
Sure. Well, it certainly is not unique to Islam along those lines either. I mean, if we look at the years of the Inquisition in the Middle Ages and such in medieval times, they not only would take your life if you changed your religion, they would do it in very creative ways. It was actually very significant torture. I mean, it was nothing to get boiled in oil or to get sawed in two or to be put on a rack and stretched until you died. Or sometimes they could put you in a very small cage and hang you like you were in a bird cage, or you couldn't stand up. Just leave you there until you wasted away. And it's almost as if the idea was they were going to give you punishment in this life so that you would avoid punishment eternally, and like they were doing you a favor. And it's there are black eyes for maybe all religions where things like that occurred, and it's you can read about atrocities, for example, in the Old Testament. And it occurs to me that if CNN would have been alive during some of those times, it would have been all over the world, and it would not have been in a very good light.
Michael, let's put this in context. Those inquisitors during the Inquisition were not representing Jesus.
They were not.
In order to represent Jesus, you have to teach the people to love each other, to love God and to love the neighbor. Then you will be representing Jesus. Christianity at that time, at the time of the Inquisitors, was basically to try to purify Spain from all Jews and all Muslims. When the Muslims were ruling Spain, Jews and Christians were welcome. The Mosque of Cordoba, the first university probably in the world, the Mosque of Cordoba. This is where the word chair come from to the Western world. A scholar used to have a chair he sits on and his students around him. This is where the word chair really came from. So at that time, even Moshe bin Mamnoon, the Ma'munide, very famous Jewish scholar, had a chair there and was teaching Judaism to his students inside the mosque. And priests were there preaching the teachings of Jesus, preaching love, and they were welcome inside the mosque. And the Muslims have chairs, and they were teaching. All this tells you that the society was wide open. So the reaction to that was the Inquisition after the Muslim lost the war against Ferdinand and Isabel, who took over Andalusia and turned it back into a middle-aged country. I wouldn't say middle-aged Christian country, because Christianity was not the Christianity that Jesus have preached. So I wouldn't insult Christianity by calling it that. So Christianity that I know is a Christianity that all Muslims respect and should respect, because it's a religion, as far as we Muslims are concerned, revealed by God, the same God that revealed the Quran to us later on. So this is where I stand from this issue.
And it seems to me there's a common denominator between apostasy as it has been implemented in history, both in Christian as well as in Muslim circles, has been political systems. That
one religion get destroyed when the religion and the state are one and the same. It happened to Christianity when Constantine decided to adopt Christianity. It happened to Muslims when Muawiyah turned the state into an empire. Power of man and power of God sometimes are contradictory. I love to have a meek heart all the time. I love to think of my creator with humility. And I love to love my neighbor because I love his creator. So religion, pure religion, true religion, Jesus taught true religion is orphans and widows. So that means you have a heart for the people who needs love and you give them with abundance. So in my mind, the minute you have state and religion together, you're going to start having deviation from true religion into a political power. And that would ruin religion. It ruined both, basically.
So in your mind, is there a legitimate place for the use of the word apostasy?
Only as an adjective in a, not as an item with a legal implication at all, The same thing goes for other definition that you mentioned to me.
Sure.
You have
blasphemy, heresy,
blasphemy. It's still, look, some Muslim countries also now using blasphemy as a criminal activity. You are trying to say bad things about Islam, bad things about the Prophet, and that will necessitate that the state will consider you a criminal. They should arrest you. They should take you to jail. You should go to a court. And then I don't know what they'll do to you. But again, this, as an American, I'm totally 100% against that, because it's against the freedom of thoughts and the freedom of expression, the First Amendment of our Constitution. We failed to take those values back to wherever we went with our armed forces. We failed to do this. Instead, we acted like colonial powers instead of educators. The Iraqis were supposed to welcome us because we were helping them get rid of a dictator, but we didn't act like this. We stripped Iraq from all its treasures and ruined the existing treasures over there and left them in a chaotic situation where sectarianism is really ending the state of Iraq. Iraq is a disaster, was a disaster, and still a disaster right now. Much worse than when Saddam was ruling there. So actually, we didn't go there to take American values at all. We didn't do that, and we should have. Americans would do very well exporting democratic values to other places peacefully by being an example, a great example for this. But going there to talk about American values and then do like the inquisitors in a sense is rejected, So we worship God actually in this country. We don't worship oil. And it's wrong when we start worshiping oil and leaving God behind us. Worshiping God will bring a lot of people together. Worshiping oil will divide the world into oil producing weak countries that we can take advantage of and our own needs.
So would you agree with me that there is a significant gulf between what we see as a manifestation of our religions politically versus what our most important messengers taught us, both Jesus as well as Muhammad?
Michael, an average American is a very good person. An average American is my neighbor, basically. I migrated to the United States because I heard it's a country of neighbors. So If it wasn't for my neighbors when I moved into the States, I wouldn't have made it. They welcomed me. They made me feel I'm an equal human being, just like they are. They taught me about the Constitution. They taught me about the American values. We have fantastic values in this country, so we cannot condemn all this. But what we condemn is the militarism, the empire aspiration, the worship of power, going from one war to the next, to the next, to the next, feeling necessary to have an enemy all the time. That will keep us away from all revelations from God. Whether we're talking about the Torah, whether we're talking about the gospel, whether we're talking about the Quran, none of these books teach us to go and be dominant over the rest of the world and treat the rest of the world as second-class citizen while we are the first-class citizen. So we just need to go back to Jesus' teachings. I mean, this country is predominantly Christians who claim to be following Jesus. Let's go back to the teachings of Jesus. If you don't want to follow Jesus Christ, the Christ, let's follow Jesus of Nazareth, a man who lived according to certain principles that we need to learn, we need to obey, we need to live by, you know. So it doesn't really have to be a religion that we follow. I follow principles, and those principles are good here and in the Philippines as well as in China. You know, the principles of Jesus are good principles for people to know and to follow.
Well, how do you think we should summarize our conversation today, as far as, you know, this issue of apostasy and how it is manifested in our lives today?
Yes, by being less fanatic and being more open to our neighbors, by trying to imitate Jesus and learn his principles, not necessarily Jesus as the Christ that as Christianity define it, but Jesus as the man who gave us some fantastic principles that we claim to live by. That does not pollute the separation of religion and state. As a matter of fact, it'll put it all basically where it should be. I live my life the way I want to live. It's just happened that my values are synchronized with the values that Jesus taught, the values that exist in the Quran. They're one and the same. This is what I live by. If we do this, then we'll have to love our neighbor, believe in the freedom of conscience, try to give people the freedom to live their life the way they choose to live it, and not the way I want to live it. I cannot impose my way over you, and you shouldn't impose your way over me. We're both free to live according to our conscience in this country. This teaching by example. If we can spread these values and other people start noticing them, they'll start imitating us. And if they start imitating these values that we can demonstrate every day, then the rest of the world will be closer to us, will be closer to peace around the world. We need to demonstrate what we believe. If we believe in certain values, we need to show the rest of the world that we truly believe in them. That's all.
Let me make this comment as we close. There was a man by the name of Herbert of Cherbury in the 17th century that saw the divisions between the various Christian groups and the Muslims and the Jews, and he came up with 5 assertions that he believed were common to all of our religions. Number 1, there is a God. Number 2, we should worship that God. Number 3, our love and towards our fellow man and the good deeds we do is integral to our faith in God. Number 4, if we fail in those areas, we must repent and seek forgiveness. And number 5, there will be consequences for our evil deeds and rewards for our good deeds in the life hereafter.
Amen.
We all share those things.
Yes.
And so do you have any final thing to say before I wrap this up today for us today?
Yes. I hope I was able to summarize where Islam stands on this and where I personally stand. You know, I don't want people to think that all Muslims share the same ideas that I just expressed. I know when we talk about Islam, the diversity among Muslims is huge. And you'd find, when you're talking to Muslim, you'll find the good, the bad, and the ugly, like anybody else. The best among the Muslims are those who love God and love their neighbors, and those who demonstrate this, not just talk about it. And I would dare to say the best among Christians are equally those who love God and love their neighbors. So let's take the common denominators we have and appreciate them and try to live by them and try to establish peace within our own communities and later on the larger communities and the world based on these principles.
Well, I guess I would have to say amen to that.
Well, here we go.
Yeah. So I thank you, Dr. Kaskas, for joining with me today. I have enjoyed our conversations, this one, and to include the number of them that we've had previous to this. To those who have listened to our conversation, I encourage you to visit www.kaskas.com, which is Dr. Kaskas's website. The name is very easy to spell. It is simply Kaskas. And among other good things, the website will show you how to acquire a copy of Dr. Kaskas's translation of the Quran into modern English. I also encourage you to read my novel, A Divine Wink, When Love and Religion Become Rivals. In the novel, Adila, a devout Muslim woman, falls in love with Martin, a devout Christian man. And their love struggles to survive the opposition from their families and their separate, unsympathetic religions. They essentially become sources of criticism about apostasy in some cases. I think, though, you will be pleased to learn how Martin and Adila deal with this opposition, and more importantly, how they came to discover the extraordinary common truths between Islam and Christianity that make their relationship both edifying and possible. Please go to www.adivinewink.com to make this novel a part of your life. While there, you will also find a link to Peace Catalyst International, which will give you an opportunity to financially support the important work we do. Please help us, and I thank you.